All right, good afternoon, everybody. We are going to get started here in a couple minutes. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat the sign-in for today. And there you go. If you wouldn't mind signing in, and this session is Google Forms and Sheets. Whenever you please indicate the sessions that you attended, if you could just mark that. And I'm going to give everyone a few extra minutes to come in and get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, I'm going to share the link to the sign-in. If you see people coming in, if you wouldn't mind sharing that. I know Amanda's got my back on that, right? Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about Google Sheets and Google Forms. Mostly what we're going to spend today talking about is Forms. And we're going to talk about the Sheets and how Sheets kind of works with Forms to get better data and information. And so if you're coming in here wanting a full training on Sheets, it's probably not the right place for you. I'd be happy to do that training. I would live in Sheets if I could. But today we're going to be talking mostly about the connection between Google Forms and Google Sheets. So if you aren't familiar with Google Forms at all, Google Forms is just a way to gather information from not just your students, but really for anything. You have already used Google Forms today whenever you did that sign-in sheet. So that sign-in sheet was a Google form, and it is just a way to gather whatever information you would like to get. We use other things in the district, things like Monkey, what is that one called? Monkey, Survey Monkey, right? Yeah, Survey Monkey. And this is just a different version of that. It's the one that's going to work a little bit better with Google and work a lot less better than other things, just depending on what information you're trying to get. But for what we need, we're going to be using Google Forms in a way that can be pretty useful. The agenda today, we are going to be just looking at the basics of Google Forms, what options there are available, and really just what is it? What does one look like? What are all the question types and information that you can include on there? We're going to take a look at what a quiz looks like compared to just a survey. We're going to look at the top right menu and all the options that are available to you whenever you're creating these Google Forms. We're going to go into the response tab of Google Forms and take a look at that. We are going to look at what Sheets can do. We're going to spend a little bit more time into Sheets than just linking it, but I'll show you some things that you can do with that. I'm going to talk really briefly about extensions and scripts. And not so much doing a how-to. That's a pretty advanced way of using Google Forms and Sheets is to attach extensions and scripts to it. But I will kind of briefly talk about it. And then I'm going to talk about where to get some extra PD, when we're done with this meet this morning or this afternoon, where else can you go to get some extra help? Okay, so I'm going to share this with you, and it is the different types of questions. So I sent you one, of course, just to get signed in for today's meet. That just asks, you know, why are you here and what's today's date, I think is about all there is. But this is a good example of all the options that are available to you. So you have text questions that you can ask where they have to type in something to respond. You can do a more full paragraph text. So this one's tell us a little bit about yourself. You can have multiple choice where they can only select one response at a time, but you can have checkbox questions where they can select any assortment of answers before they send it to you. If you have a lot of answers and don't want to use necessarily the multiple choice, you can use a drop down. Of course, this is yes or no. You can do anything in here, but I like using this best if you have a lot of answers as an option. So, for example, what is your email address? And instead of having them type it in, you might have a list that they choose from so that there's no mistypes or anything like that. You can ask scale questions going from 1 to 5, whether you don't like something or love it, but you don't just have you can change this don't like or love to anything that you want. And it doesn't have to go just from 1 to 5. It can go, I believe the top number that it can go to is 10. You can also break things into sections, and so this is a section header. You can also break things into complete pages, which I don't believe is shown on this one, but we'll get to it here in a little bit. You can show things off. You can ask questions that involve grids with multiple choice, and you can also have a question. Doesn't look like they've added it on this one. You can also have a not just a multiple choice grid, but you can have a checkbox grid as well, so that you can have questions built in with that as well. We have date questions, time questions, and in addition to those things, you can add graphics, you can add videos, and you can add GIFs or GIFs if you are extra crazy about the way you pronounce things. Let's see. So those are about all we have right here. These are all the question types, but we're going to get into a few of those things as we work today. Here's an example. I did want to show one more example of not just question types, but the way you can ask things. Now this is when you're actually filling out the form itself, but you're not limited on the questions that you ask to just using words as a question. So these are images that have been inserted in because, especially with asking math questions, it's you might need to show things in a much different way than just being able to type a question. So you can insert images not just inside of your form, but in the question and answer section of your of the form itself. So you're given a lot of leeway on the way questions can be asked. Okay. So the first thing is, how do you create a form, right? How do you get one started? There's 3 different ways that you can do that. And I'm actually going to share my full screen because I know at some point today I am going to mess this up and forget to share the right screen I'm in, and then you guys are too nice to tell me, and then like 5 minutes go by and you're like, what is he talking about? And I did it this morning. So yeah. So let's go over here. There's 3 ways to actually start a quiz. So the first way is to go into your Google Drive and click the New button up here. And it's not one of the main options to pick from, but if you kind of hover over the More section, there is a Google Form button that you can click on, and that will open up a brand new form. In addition to a blank form, you can also choose one from a template, although I don't believe we have too many templates that are created for Carlsbad specifically for us, although there are some in there that are a little bit more generic that Google has set in there. But if I wanted to create a form, I could click on the Google Form button inside of Drive, and it's going to start me off with an untitled form ready to go. So that's one way of creating a form. The second way to create a form is to go directly to Forms itself, forms.google.com. Actually, there's 4 ways to create a form, and I'll show you all 4 of those. So when you actually go to the forms section of Google, it's going to, these are all forms that I own, and I can click on the bottom right to create a new form, or again, choose from a template. So that is forms.google.com. What I can also do, if I open up my Google Classroom page, I can create a form directly inside of my Google Classroom. So if you know that you're going to create a form with the intention of sending it out to your students, if you come over here to the Classwork tab, click Create and click Quiz Assignment, it will create a blank quiz directly inside of the form. Inside of the quiz, excuse me, and you can click on that quiz to edit the questions. So this will create a form as well. And the last way, and the most quick way, if you are in dire need of creating a Google form, on your URL, you can type forms.new. And this is a quick little way to really create anything inside of Google. If you type in docs.new or slides.new or sheets.new, a brand new item will come up whenever you type that in. I think this works even if you're not inside of Google Chrome, although I mostly only use Google Chrome, but that'll create your brand new form. So that is the 4 ways to create your form. So after you've actually created that form, let me send this over here so I can see everything. After you've actually created your form, as I said, there's different question types that you can begin to ask. So here's the title of the form, but there's different question types that you can ask. But a lot of times you actually don't need to select it. And let me give you an example. This is set to multiple choice right now, but if I ask a question, Google actually has AI built into Google Forms that will change the question type for you based on what it thinks is the question that should be asked. So if I say, what is your name? Then without doing anything, that changed to short answer by itself. If I say true or false, then it changes to multiple choice. What's especially nice about this is that suggestions start to appear on the bottom, asking me, hey, this is true or false. Do you want to add true or false to your answers? And you can, if you click yes to that suggestion, then both of those question types answers will start appearing. So on a scale of 1 to 5, I haven't actually tried this. Let's see if it changes to linear by itself. How likely are you to attend today's training? Let me put the question mark there. It might not do it because I have true or false, but so it doesn't look like it's going to switch it. But for the most part, this does a good job of selecting the correct items as you begin to type them. So just as one more example of the suggestions that might appear, it's not just limited to basic things like true or false. For example, what is the capital of New Mexico? It should, because it did it just earlier today. It should change it to short answer for you and then give you the suggestion of New Mexico. It did that earlier for me, so maybe it's just being stingy. Let's try that one more time down here and see if it does it. Oh man.
Any other tools?
So apparently it's got some kinks to work out. I tried it earlier today and it was doing a good job for me. But a lot of times the suggestions will appear here at the bottom and you'll be able to select. But if like this, it's not coming up for you the way you want, you can click on the question type and select anything. And again, we have short answers, paragraphs, multiple choice, checkboxes, the drop downs. There is an option to do a file upload, which we did not set up inside of, it was not showed during the beginning of this meet, but there's the linear scale, the multiple choice, the checkbox, and the date and the time. So these are the types of questions that can be asked along the way. Now, you might notice across the side here, there's a little sidebar that pops up and with some additional options. So one is the one that I've used a couple times, which is just to be able to add a question directly below the question that you're on. But you can also import questions, and I'm going to come back to this one here in 1 second. You can add a title and a description. So instead of a question itself, you can just add a title and a description to description. There we go. You can kind of just to separate your form and make it look a little bit better. You can directly import images, and it doesn't have to be images that you have. You can do a Google image search and import an image that way. In addition to images, you can insert videos. And again, you can do a video search through YouTube, or if you have a direct URL, you can use that. And because it showed it in the other one, you can import GIFs as well. So those are some extra things that you can add. And then finally, you can add entire sections. And what this does for you is it breaks it into different pages. And there's some great ways that you can use different sections to create like a choose your adventure game, and would be great for middle school or upper elementary or high school students to create one themselves, and you can do some really cool things with it. And if you're interested in that, I'll kind of show you that towards the end. But this is one way that you can set it to where if they finish the top section, you can either have them continue to the next section. It can be dependent on an answer as well. You can go directly to submit form. You're given a few different options of how that's done. Okay. Just showing off the different options here. In addition to the questions here, you do have your responses tab. Of course, this is brand new form, so nothing is going to be a response, but we'll come back to this here pretty soon. And then over on the top right, we're given a few more options, and this is kind of a complaint that I have with Google Forms, in that if I go to Google Docs or Google Slides or Google Sheets, the main things that Google uses, it doesn't look like this. And I would rather everything look the same, so that when so that you're not kind of thrown off on where to find stuff. But they didn't choose to go that route. But if you have any add-ons, you can do add-ons right here. There's a few that are probably available to you that the district has pushed out for their own end, but I'm not going to lie to you, you will probably never need to use these. A lot of the stuff is going to be built in for what you need them. You can make your form look a little bit better. You can choose different headers, or you can just change the color of the form to make it look a little bit better, or for readability, if you have some issues with students that have a difficult time with certain colors. The question mark, or excuse me, the little eyeball is your preview tab, and this is going to be a way to send out your response to people using the URL. And what I'll show you up here is, here's my URL, and you'll notice at the very end of it, it says edit and responses. If I change this over to the questions tab, it changes to /edit right here at the end. But if I want to send this form out, I wouldn't want to send out the edit link for people, because I don't want them to be able to edit it, and they wouldn't be able to edit it anyways. They might not be able to get where they need to go. So what I would do is click on this little eyeball, and it's going to show me what the form actually looks like to send out to either my students or to other faculty, or whatever the case may be. And you'll notice that the URL changed. Now it is view form at the very end of that URL. So you would want to copy this URL to be able to send it out to everyone. And speaking of URL, if anyone has come into the meet, if we could get the attendance sheet sent out one more time, that way we're good to go. You do have the send button, and it's just another way to send this to people. You can email this directly and do a few things with this. You can also use this spot here to add collaborators, and that's usually called the share button inside of Docs. So you could add a collaborator to get you where you need to go, so that they could help edit the document or use it in their own class, although I'm going to show you something about that here in 1 second. And then finally, we're going to come back to this 3-dot menu up here, but in the 3-dot menu, you're given a few more additional options on what you can do with this document. And I think I skipped over the settings button, and again, we're going to come back to that. So very generally speaking, is anyone have any questions as we go along before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of Google Forms? Anyone not know how to get there or create one or any issues like that? Okay. If there are, please don't hesitate to go ahead and type into the chat box any questions that you might have. I will make sure that I'm checking on that chat box as we go throughout. So let's go ahead and get into some of the settings. So one of the things that you might do, I'm actually going to open up my Google Drive right here. One of the things that you might have noticed if you use Google Forms quite a bit is the ability to share forms with other teachers, but that the issues that might come up because of that. As an example, if I send a form to my students and I get a bunch of responses, and I don't have any that I can share with you, and I apologize for that. If I have forms that I would like to send out to my students, and I do, and I get a bunch of responses back, and then I share that Google form with other teachers, then because nothing has changed on that form, when their students begin answering questions on that form, their answers are going to appear alongside the students in my class. So it's a really, really good idea to make a copy of the forms that you have sent out. And so one way of doing that is to go into your Google Drive and clicking on the share button and making a copy, and you can share it with those other people. You can share them, I believe, as a view access, but again, you might run into the same issue, so I apologize. What you're going to want to do instead is let me actually find one and that I can make a copy of. What I'm going to do up here at the top of my Google Drive is to click my down arrow, and I want my type of files to be forms, and I want the owner of those files to be owned by me. And I'm going to do a search for any Google form that I have that I am the owner of. Okay, so what I might want to do is, let's see, professional development log template. So what I might want to do is, instead of sending this to someone because it's a template, I don't want it to be changed. What I can do is make a copy of it first, and it will create that copy, and I can then go into the share settings. So this is the copy that I don't want access to anyone. So I'm going to share this with Anita, and I'm going to make her an editor, and I'm going to send this to her. Now, I could stop there, and now she has a copy of that for her own use, but I'm still the owner of it, and I don't really want to be the owner of this file. So what I'm going to do again is right-click one more time. I'm going to click Share, and I'm going to change her from the editor to the owner of this file. So now I can even go one step and just remove myself. So now she has her own copy. It's in her Google Drive, and I don't have anything to do with it, but I was able to share that document with her, which is what we could, which is good, so that her replies don't get mixed in with yours. Now, having said that, on the other end of things, if someone sends you a Google Drive invite for their own file, you can make a copy of the one that they sent, just like we did before, by right-clicking and clicking on Make a Copy. But, and this is where I wanted to come back into this button right over here, which is the Import Questions button. Because if I click the Import Questions button, I'm given the option to import questions from any Google Drive that I have access to, or any Google form that I have access to. So let's say I had a discipline template that I had before, and I used this, let's see, on November 7th, 2019. So here's a discipline form that I once created, and I'm going to click select, and off to the side over here, all of the questions from that form came up. And so I can select all of them and import those questions. Now I didn't have to touch the form that was shared with me at all. I was able to import the questions directly into this so that I'm not mixing my data from one teacher to the next. So this is a great way of importing any questions. And so now exactly the way that the form was built, if it added sections, if it added comments, if it added descriptions, everything's going to be brought over. But I was able to do that without touching the original document, which is very nice. So it would be very nice if this was a little bit more prominent here, importing questions. I would want a button right up here at the top that says it, but sadly, they don't pay me the big bucks to make those decisions, I guess. Okay, so any questions on copying forms? I know that this is one that can annoy teachers and frustrate them greatly, of having a form and then someone else using it and messing up your data. Any questions about that? Has that happened to anyone, by the way, in here? I see a couple people nodding their heads. Some people are saying no. Yeah. That's usually the more frantic of the emails that I get whenever stuff like that happens, but there you go. So let's actually go ahead and break this up, and I'm going to type into the chat a Google form that I would like you to go ahead and start filling out. And so in the chat, you have this getting informed with Google Forms. And if you wouldn't mind, take just a few minutes and go ahead and complete that to the best of your ability. I'm going to put my mic on mute while you guys are completing that. If you have any questions during this time, don't hesitate to put it in the chat. All right, let's go ahead. Even if you haven't completely finished that, if you want to work your way through it, I'm going to talk about the top right, the options that are available to you that we didn't cover just a bit ago. the first thing I'll cover is the settings right here, and I'll kind of show you some best practices stuff here. Collecting email addresses is always going to be the way to go, because this is going to tell you who sent it to you. What's nice about this is that if you forget to include first name and last name inside of your Google form, a question for that, then at least you were able to get their information from this. One other thing to think about with this one is, or with a first name, last name question, I would recommend still including those just for sorting later. It's a lot easier to find the information that you might need whenever you have a question for both first name and last name. So I would include both questions in there. It's just going to take them, one additional second really to type in their information, but it's going to make life a lot easier on you whenever it comes grading time. You can restrict this to users in Carlsbad Municipal Schools, and if you're sending this out to your students, go ahead and do that. But if you ever plan on not sending this to just Carlsbad Municipal Schools, if you want to include parents as well with this, you're going to make sure that you want to turn that off. I usually don't like limiting to one response. If you're doing a test, you might want to do this, but that means that they can't go in later and take it a second time. So you want to be careful with this and make sure that you definitely only get one response from the participant. And then make sure that you're careful with these down here, that they can edit after submitting. If you're taking a grade on something, you probably don't want to have these checked, and that they can see a summary chart and text responses. I've actually not messed with that too much, so so good luck if you want to use it. Now, you can change a little bit on the presentation here, show a progress bar, shuffle the question order. Might be good if you're in a computer lab, for example. I used to do this whenever I taught at 6th grade academy. I would shuffle the question order so they can't just follow along with someone. And it kind of confuses them, especially the first time they do it, unless you tell them otherwise, because they think that there are different questions. It's a completely different test. You can show the link to submit another response. This is blanked out for me because I have limited it to one response each. So obviously they can't submit a different response because I have limited them to only one response. And right now the confirmation message whenever you finished that is your response has been recorded, but this can be anything. And I used to change this to a link to a different assignment or a different maybe if I wanted them to go watch a video or do a Khan Academy assignment, I would put the link to the Khan Academy video so that whenever they finished this, they knew what to do so that they didn't have to come ask me what to do. Finally, I did make this a quiz, but you can turn this quiz off. What the quizzes function does is it gives you the ability to assign points, and some of these questions will be graded automatically whenever you do this. If you turn it on locked mode inside of your Chromebooks. You can do this whenever you create the assignment inside of Classroom, but you can also do it here. What this does is it basically turns your Chromebook into a lockdown browser so that the only thing that they do whenever they start this quiz, if they're on a Chromebook, is that they the only thing that they can see or go to is this quiz. You have to be careful with this one though, because if you turn this on, that means the only type of device that the students can take the quiz on is a Chromebook. So if I were to turn this on and send out the link and someone tried to do it on a PC, it would actually not let them. They would have to have a Chromebook. So you kind of have to be careful with that. You can release grades automatically. Having said that, if there are questions in there that require, like the question that you did on this document was the Gettysburg Address. If there's any manual review that has to take place, I would make sure that I click this button, because it's going to give them the wrong score, and you're probably going to get a lot of questions on why did I miss that question. Well, you didn't miss that question, I just haven't got to it yet. So I always like making this later so that I can have an opportunity to make sure that the answers that were collected are what I want them to be. But if you do go the other route, you can give them as much information as you can on what questions they missed, what the correct answers of those questions actually were, and some more information on the point values. Maybe you didn't make it 1 point each, you made some questions worth 5 points, you can turn that on right there. Okay, now because this is a quiz, I'll go ahead and kind of go through what what that kind of looks like whenever you're doing the grading section. And before I do that, you notice that I have these Equatio little buttons right here, and I have this extension added on to my browser. So if you're missing these, don't worry. Nothing's wrong with your Google form, but you might have these, and I'll show you here in just a little bit exactly how to use them. So let's see. In which hand is this Statue of Liberty? Does anyone want to take a shot? Say it in chat or say it out loud. Which hand it's in?
Yeah.
Come on, somebody.
I mean,
Right.
Right hand.
Right hand. Right hand. All right. So, so I'm able to, if you go in here, you can actually see that the right hand has a check mark next to it. I came into my answer key because this is a quiz. I was able to come into the answer key and select what the right hand was. So this question is actually going to be graded for me, and it is worth 1 point. So any multiple choice questions can be graded for you. Really, any question can be graded for you, and I'll kind of go into that. This is on a traffic light. Where is the green light located? And we have a check mark next to the bottom. So on the traffic light, it's on the bottom, and this question is again worth 1 point. By the way, I did not go over these things here. You can duplicate a question, delete a question. Here's how you're going to actually delete them if you no longer want this question. And you can actually make this a required question so that they cannot submit or go to the next page until this question is answered. I included a video just so you can kind of take a look at that. And then what 6 colors are on the classic Campbell's soup? So if I click on here, we can see that it should be blue, red, white, yellow, black, and gold. And that one was worth 1 point. Although I could have made this worth 6 points and done some work on there, but there you go. With this in mind, this is the order that I put them in: blue, green, red, white. But on your page, it might not have been in this order because there's these 3 dots right here on the bottom right. I can shuffle the option order so that they always appear in a different order. And so that's something that you can do as well. What 2 letters do not appear on the telephone dial? Let's see if I click on this. We had 2 letters are Q and Z. Short answer, grading short answer, it has to be identical to the, if you want it graded for you, it has to be identical to the way that they type it in. So if you would have put Q comma Z, then it's going to mark it wrong. And I'll show you how to fix that, how you can still include, if they have the right answer. But if you notice, I was very specific with the way in my description, the answer this question with lowercase letters and the word and between the letters, for example, A and B. So I made sure that if I wanted this graded in a certain way, that I included a description to tell them how I graded it in that certain way. How has remote learning gone for you so far? In the last, in the example that I sent you, it was, good and not good or something like that. But again, you can put anything you want in here. Match these capitals. So here's some matching. This is a way to do single answer matching as you go through. You can also include a question. As I said before, you can include if your book, if the curriculum that you're using has a question built into it with matching, instead of asking the question like it is here, you can include an image of what the book actually has as that question, have that, and then have the multiple choice grid. And here's whenever you fill out the multiple choice grid, here's the way that it's going to look when you're building it. You're going to have your rows that go on the left-hand side and your columns that go across the top. And whenever the question is the way that it actually looks for the participants, it looks like this. Doing the same thing, you can match these animals with their features, and we're going to have a question about this here in a second on which of these animals is considered a pet and which one is considered in the zoo, and can you have both, and so forth. And then finally, you have this Gettysburg Address right here, which is, I went ahead and did put the answer key, but you notice there's no answer at all. There's no answer at all, and so I'm going to show you how to grade that really quickly. Okay, so let's take a look at the responses. And I did not include names on this, just just for the reason of not anonymity. There we go, if I can spit that out. But you can take a look at the responses tab, and you can start seeing some insights here. And it's going to break it down. There's going to be some charts and graphs for you, and it depends on the way that you've built it. How these charts and graphs could look, but you can kind of see really quickly how well someone did. Because this is a quiz, you can see, the breakdown of how your students did. The frequently missed questions is going to appear here. So we had a lot of missed questions on the 6 colors of the classic soup. So this is going to give you some insight into where you need to start addressing your instruction, and which parts especially you need to do some reteaching on. You have the scores for all of the people, and I'll skip through that so that no one has their name showing for too long there. So we have today's date. We had someone pick the 23rd. Everyone picked the 24th. I looked at it wrong. And so you can see the breakdown of the questions, and we're not going to go over each one right here. But you'll notice that whenever we get to this last question, what is the opening line of the Gettysburg Address? There's quite a few different answers that could have been acceptable here. And so how do we grade that? Well, in addition to grading with having the summary, you can look at specific questions. Now, this is going to tell you that there were 24 responses. This is an ungraded question, but all 24 responses had the same answer. Okay, but here, we had 18 people pick right and 6 people pick left. You can then see on the traffic light, we had 18 people pick the bottom and 6 people pick the top. 6 colors. So here's where we can start looking at this and saying, okay, well, here was the correct answer, which we had 8. But one response was had 5, but they missed 1, and one response had green and they were missing 1, and you can kind of break it down, right? But if I were to go to that last question, so we have 5 ungraded responses, okay, that are just kind of, maybe were left empty, it looks like. But we have 4 score and 7 years ago. That's how it starts. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that as a correct answer. And now those people have been given credit for that. 4 score and 7 years ago with 3 dots behind it. That's good enough for me. 4 score and 7 years ago, and then they included more. That's even better for me. And let's see, can I give them 2 points? I don't know. Let's see if it stays there. And give them extra credit for including more, right? Okay, 4 score and 7 years ago. That's a correct answer. So you can do manual grading through your paragraph or your short answer questions by coming through here and just selecting whether or not these are going to give, that you're going to give credit for the answer to this. And I don't see really any that are completely wrong, so everyone gets full credit for that because I didn't tell you how long you needed to put it. But let's see, the ungraded responses here, looks like these didn't include the actual answer, so those are going to be the ones that missed that. So I'm going to make sure that I save that across the bottom, and now the answers have been saved. What's nice about this too is that there were 4 responses with 4 score and 7 years ago. If someone were to go in there right now and type 4 score and 7 years ago, it's going to automatically mark it correct. It's going to group these together and give them the points that they need. So now if I go back into my, let's see, my summary here, now everything's been shifted to the right just a little bit because more people have been got that last question correct than before. Okay, but let me go, let's see. Let me go back a couple questions, and we're going to match these animals with their features. Here's what I put as the correct answers. If you don't agree with them, now's your time to speak up. Does anyone think a parrot should not be in a zoo, seen in many zoos, or a lion should be kept as a pet? Now's your time. Speak now or forever, Okay, so I can go through here then and see that for each one, this does not include the top section as much as it should, but you can go through and do a breakdown. But I can also go through and change this. So if someone makes a quality argument that a hedgehog is also seen in a zoo, then I can make that change by going down here. I thought I could make it right up there. I guess I'm going to have to view the responses. Nope. So I'm not seeing what I saw earlier, but I know there is a way to make this. You might have to go into the actual questions themselves and make that change there. But you can make that change on the fly. And then finally, I won't click on it, but if I will, because I think the first one is going to be from me. So you can see the answers that I put in earlier. And so if you need to see anyone's, if we want to put Divas on there or Katie's on there, you can take a look and see exactly what that person put on there. Okay, so any questions about the responses tab? This is still not showing you as much information as you would like. So I say that knowing that something else is coming up. Are there any questions about the responses tab? Okay. All right, so the next thing is actually combining these things with Google Sheets, and this is where it starts getting a lot more powerful. And I'm actually going to start with these three dots. Before we get into that, you can get an email notification for new responses. What I always did with this, I always let students redo any assignments. And so I made sure that that they couldn't just copy, their answers that they put in before. But anytime a student redid something, I would get an email notification. So I always turned this on so that I knew to go back and check my resubmissions. Or this is good, just if the due date has passed and you're not really going to be looking at this anymore, go ahead and turn on email notifications so that you can be reminded to go back and look if someone submits something late. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, but I'm going to go ahead and open this spreadsheet, create with a spreadsheet. So whenever I create it, whenever I select it for the first time, it's going to ask me, do I want to create a new spreadsheet or do I want to select an existing spreadsheet? If you can actually create your lesson or your spreadsheet so that maybe you're planning on doing one quiz for every week, a Friday quiz at the end of the week. You can select a spreadsheet that is, Friday quizzes, and what it's going to do is it's going to have a different tab for every single assignment that you have. A word of warning about this is that as you get more and more forms connected to this, it's really going to slow your computer down, especially if you're using if you're on poor quality internet. It's going to slow your computer down. So I always liked just creating a new spreadsheet for mine. I did connect sometimes, but again, I wouldn't do more than 5 or 6 before it really starts slowing down. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create. And it is going to automatically send this in, and I'm going to hide that column so that we don't have anyone's names. And so now I can see the timestamp of when that person submitted, which is great for knowing whether or not a submission was turned in late or not. It's going to tell me the score that they gave, as well as the answer to each one of the questions as they appeared on the document. And so I can go through there and see every single answer that was given. It's going to break it down in a little bit better of a way so that you can take a look at it. Now, this is all well and good, and it's especially good to get trends. Maybe you saw the same answer appear here. If you were doing a math assignment, as an example, if you saw the same answer appear as a wrong answer, you probably need to figure out what mistake they're making, and because then you can correct that mistake in a better way. But a better way to show something like this would be with this. So here's the sign-in sheet that you came up that you have already signed in with. So I'm going to click on my responses, and I have 272 responses. So I'm going to view the responses here. And what I like about forums, and this would be a great way of maybe taking attendance for your class for the day, is that you can use some filters across the top to gather more information. So I have my timestamp like I did before, I have my email address, and then the additional questions that were answered. Well, let's say I wanted to filter this. I'm going to have to remove the filter so that I can put the filter back on. But let's say I wanted to see, well, how many times has Amanda Hale, just because you're the top one, Amanda, how many times has she attended any trainings for the district? Well, I can, or at least with the digital learning team. What I can do is highlight that row, and I'm going to come over here on Sheets, and I'm going to click the little upside down triangle with the line down. It's a filter, and I'm going to click the Create a Filter button. And what it does is it puts these 3 little lines next to each one of the columns. And so now on the email address, if I click that those 3 lines, I am given quite a few ways to filter this. I can sort. So I'm going to go back over to this document. If I want to sort, I don't necessarily want to do it that way on theirs, because then I'll be giving away people's answers. But if I wanted to sort this by last name or first name so that I can put in my answers more quickly inside of Synergy, I can sort by last name, and then I would have the score right next to it so that I can import my scores. But if I only wanted to see Amanda Hale, I could filter by value right here, and the value is each person's email address. So I can type in Amanda. Actually, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to clear everyone. So I'm going to undo the check mark next to everyone, and then I'm going to type in Amanda. And there's Amanda Hill. So now she's the only one with a check mark next to her name. And whenever I click OK, it's going to break it down. So I can see that she attended on the 16th, she attended the beginner Block C tutorial. And on the 23rd, she attended the Google Forms and Sheets tutorial. So, and I can reset it by going back and selecting all. So if I were to change this, I see Amy Harris's name quite a few times. So I'm going to clear it one more time, and I'm going to say Amy Harris, check mark next to her name. And so now I can see her name that appears 3 times. And so this filtering is going to make it, you can do quite a few things with the filtering. And so you can also filter. Let's see, if I were to, let's go back into this other, let's go back over here and filter this. And I'm going to filter it by score. I can filter it by quite a few things by conditions. So maybe I want to pull in a group of students that got less than 70% or whatever on this. So I can less than or equal to a value. Now I can't type in 70% because the answers aren't in 70%, but I can say anything less than or equal to, let's see if this works. Let's do 10 out of 18. And now it does. These aren't actual numbers. They're text messages that are text that has that. So you couldn't filter by that score. But if you were to change these just to 17, 15, 17, and so forth, you could then filter by those numbers themselves. But then, so if you filter by anyone that got less than 10 points, you can then pull those students into an RTI group and do some additional work with them. Okay, any questions about Google Forms, the way that it integrates with Sheets? I only have you for about 7 more minutes, and I got a couple more things that I wanted to go over. Any questions? The one thing that I'll say along these lines is that, here's the question, here's 7, for example, and let's see, they picked, well, let me pick this one right here. Anything with left in their name. So obviously we said that it's on the right-hand side, but let's say that this was actually both answers could have been correct. So this person has a 13, got a 13 on their grade, and so I can come in here and go into the question tab. and go to question, I believe that was question 3. No, question 2. Which hand is the Statue of Liberty's torch? If I were to change this so that both responses are correct, then go back in here, and that 13 did change to a 14. I didn't have to do anything along the way. So now this, whether they picked left or right, is going to show up in the score of whether it's correct or incorrect. So that's a great way of fixing the work you did, and it fixing itself for you, so that you don't have to create the spreadsheet from scratch again and have it import. Okay, so let me check the questions one more time before let's see. Okay, I don't see any. The last little bit that I did want to show you, we have here's some ideas on how you might use Google Forms, and these are just some ways that you might think of that you might not have think of. Surveys, which we've already kind of talked about. Anticipation guides, thinking about what's coming next. Quizzes, like we've talked about. Bell ringers and exit tickets. That's how I used them very, very frequently whenever I had my class, is an exit ticket before everyone left. You can do project submissions, because you can import a file if you want them to insert, to submit anything. It is possible to do it inside of Forms. Probably not the best way to do it, because you would probably want to use Google Classroom for that, but it is an idea. You can use rubrics with this, so that you can grade other people's work. And we use this at Ocotillo. If you're from Ocotillo, you might have seen it whenever we do the science fair each year. We give the judges a Google form, and they fill it out, and then they click to have another submission, and then they fill it out for the next person, and then they just keep going. Peer feedback, audience evaluation. Principals could even use Google Forms to do walkthroughs on their principals, and as soon as they click submit, they can have that form be sent to the staff that they just evaluated, and to take a look at that on how they did. Again, we did talk about attendance or logs of something, and you can use this for RSVPing different events, maybe using it as and there is an extension that you could use to RSVP even items like librarian items and stuff like that, or if you have an inventory of items inside of your classroom, to where you can use it as a check-in and check-out system. I would have to look at the name of that. I didn't write it down prior to. The other thing that I did want to talk to you really quickly about is extensions and scripts. And one of the extensions that I did mention was Equatio. And Equatio is going to be already turned on for any students or staff in the district. It's a premium add-on that we do pay for. If you are a math teacher, you need to know what Equatio is, because I'm going to click on this Insert Math button, and it should here. At the bottom, you can see the Equatio extension has now come up, and I can actually insert math equations built into this. So if I click on, no, I don't want to click on that. I want to, for example, do an equation editor, and I want to do 2 force, and then maybe the divided by symbol. And I know that there is, maybe I'm in the wrong spot, 2 force, divided by, there we go, divided by 1/3, then I can insert this directly into the form. So 2 force divided by 1/3, and on the bottom right here, I'm going to click Insert Math. It's going to do some magic. It's going to turn it into an image, and then that 2 force divided by 1/3 gets added into my Google form. And the going over all of the features of the of Equatio is definitely not for today. There's a lot of things that you can do with it, and it's probably a training that we need to get set up pretty soon for math teachers. But there's a lot of it is self-explanatory, of just getting in there and being able to insert questions into your Google Form so that it looks like an actual math problem and not just kind of symbols thrown together. But having said that, one of the best educators around with not just Google Forms, but with anything G Suite. I am going to share a link. It's Alice Keeler. So if you're familiar with Alice Keeler, she is really, really talented. She's I believe, former educator at this point. I think she does technology 100% at this point. But she builds scripts and extensions that work with G Suite that are built especially for teachers. And so that is a link to check out the extensions that she has built. Some of them are for beginners, some of them are not for beginners. But if you see one that you really, really want to use, make an appointment with us and we'll walk you through how to get some of them going. But some of them are as easy as install this extension and you get the benefits of this extension, so that you can do that. One other thing, one other person to follow, I think it's a group of teachers. It's called Cool Cat Teacher. But they put out a few things here and there, and these are a list of the best Google Drive add-ons, and a few of those do go with Google Forms, so that you can check that out. And finally, it's 3 o'clock, and so I am right on the time limit here. If you need additional help, again, you do have Anita and me at your disposal to ask any questions that you might have. But we have completely rebuilt the way that our Cavern Crusade and Alludo work. And if you attended this morning's session with me, you can check that out. But I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And inside of the Cavern Crusade, we have, I'm going to click on play. And Jamie Clarkston, you sent me an email that I was going to get back with you later today. Inside of Cavern Crusade, right here at the top, Foundational Skills and Webinars, we do have the webinars, and this webinar will be posted on here. We'll also send it out through email. But every single webinar that we have done will be posted here. And so you can see the one that I did earlier today is already here, PD on Your Own Time with Cavern Crusade. But if you need additional help on Google Forms, that's in the All Things Google section. And I'm going to scroll down to Forms, and here is about 8 different Google Form activities that you can do, and we're going to be adding to these activities as the year progresses, so that you can see all the new ways that you can learn about forms. So if you need additional professional development, might be where you go to start to kind of check things out. And if you still have questions, let us know. And we'll be happy to help you out with them. So are there any questions? I've held you over for 2 more minutes than I wanted to. Okay, so I'll be in here for a few more minutes if you didn't want to speak up whenever more people were in here. If you did not sign in to today's session, the link is in the chat. You can click on that right now. But other than that, I want to thank everyone for attending. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to hang out for a few minutes. But other than that, you guys have a great rest of your week.
Mr. Morgan, where did you say was the Cavern Crusades at?
You can go to bit.ly/Alludo. If you just type that into your browser, you'll go straight to it. And then, but a more direct link is the one that I just typed in the chat also.
The Alludo
learning.com. Yep, that'll get you. And if you're signing in for the first time, you'll have to create your account where you just put your name and what school you're from. But
okay.
Other than that, you'll have access to all those things. And if you, for whatever reason, it's giving you a hard time getting logged in there, just let me know, and we will we'll work with you to get it to get you set up in there so that you can see all the activities that are available to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes, ma'am. How are you?
Hi. I just want you to know I joined late, so I'm sorry. So I really
No
don't
problem.
need PD credit, I guess,
Sure.
because I don't think it's gonna give me. But when I'm looking at chat now, is this typical? Because I joined late, and so when I went to chat, it doesn't show all
Yeah,
your.
it's gonna only show you the chat from whenever you joined, so you're not gonna see a lot of the stuff that's on there. But
Okay.
having said that,
That's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. I don't need credit for being here. We're good.
but having
All
said that, I am going to be sending out the link for this later, and so you'll be able to check that out as well as the chat
rest.
from whenever it comes down. Okay.
I'll be in. Okay. Well, thank you. God bless. It was
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
Mr. Morgan,
Yes.
once you get out of the caverns cascade and then you want to go back in, is there a certain way to get back in other than having to go to that website again?
So yeah, this is the one that I just typed into the chat, the app.aludalearning.com.
Uh-huh.
But you can also
Just have to remember that website.
yeah, well, and if you just remember bit.ly/aludo,
Okay.
you might be able to remember that. Let me share my screen. My screen should be sharing as well.
Okay.
If I'm on my game board, for example, what I can
Uh-huh.
do, I can bring up my on the far right. I can click on the star to bookmark this tab, and so if I bookmark this, I can either put it in a folder or put it on the bookmarks bar. And you can see I have 50 links on my bookmarks bar. I use this like crazy. But if you
Okay,
have
where
your,
was that at? Up there on the hello?
so at the very top,
At the very
next to the URL, on
Okay.
the far right, there is a star. And if you click that star, you'll be able to change it to the bookmarks bar.
Oh, okay.
Add it there, then it'll add it to this little spot right in here. But I think you have to turn on that bookmarks bar. And so to do that, to turn on the bookmarks bar, if you click on the three dots on the top right of your Chrome,
Uh-huh.
and you can see bookmarks. If I hover over bookmarks, I have a check mark already there, but I can put a check mark next to show bookmarks bar. And if that's on and I add something to the bookmarks bar, then it'll start appearing there.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Any questions before I head out? I see a couple people still in here. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and head out, and I will let you get back to it. And but if you do have any questions, please let me know.